Okay, so welcome everybody to this late start of my talk, The Fundamental Failures of Endpoint Security. My name is Stefan Frey. I'm a Research Analyst Director at Secunia. Secunia is a leading provider of vulnerability intelligence and patch management solutions. What I will present today is research we did based on analysis of scan logs from more than 4 million users of our free tool, the Secunia PSI. This is a small agent that enumerates all the programs you have installed on a typical endpoint, correlates it with vulnerability intelligence to identify insecure programs, and the analysis of this data mining exercise led us to the title, The Fundamental Failures of Endpoint Security. To start our defenses, it's always good to know the attacker, to know the threat environment. So to map that in a first simple model, I think we could look at two axes. One is the attacker's expertise from low to very high. On the other axis, we have the motivation from just curiosity to financial gain. There are some areas we can identify within this model. One is vandalism, very low expertise, no financial goals involved. The other one, if you have personal gain or financial motives, then it's clearly theft, and it goes up to very, very skilled attackers. What you now find in the cyber underground is that authors or the experts are the authors of the tools that you find in the cybercrime underground. And those experts working for money, this is the fastest growing segment. This leads to the situation that tools created by the experts are easily available to less skilled attackers, and they are more and more used or abused for financial gain. So generally, we can say we find today a high degree of automation of attacks paired with more and more opportunistic attacks. Even if you think you're not target, if an automated script finds you cannot differentiate on this, bang, you get owned. Tools are plentiful. You even have a malware as a service model, or you get replacement warranty. We have here a sample of Turkoyan. It's offered for $249 with a service level agreement and replacement warranty if this creation is detected by any antivirus within the next 9 months. I will give you a sample. I had the pleasure to talk to one of the Turkoyan developers last year. End of last year was very interesting. How they operated, what they did, how it works. And tools are there, and I will give you a live demonstration how this really works. And then we ask some questions. What does it mean for us as the defenders, as we are exposed? So I will turn Minesweeper, or I could take any program of your choice. I will turn Minesweeper into a working Trojan, and all I need to do is just my right hand and the mouse. There's absolutely no coding required. So as always with a live demo, I hope it works. I have here in a virtual machine this Trojan construction kit. This one is called Spynet. If you can handle Google or Bing, you will find those malware tools easily in the malware underground. Basically, cybercrime is a very competitive environment. So cybercrime is the very latest version of their tools you have to pay for. However, older versions, they provide them for free just to show off. So, hey, try it out. I can deliver. Check it out. So when I started, the biggest hurdle between having the Trojan after starting the program and I did it the first time was finding the option to change the language from Portuguese to English. So this is the dashboard. My Trojans would then report here, but we look at the phase, how we create the new Trojans. We see it's a very nice screen. We have tooltips. At the bottom, I have about 10 very easy to use options. So number one, I give basic options like the domain name or domain names or IP addresses, how the bots will connect to me. By using domain names or several domain names, I can also exploit or use domain flux technologies to make this botnet robust against takedown. I give it an identification, so probably I don't run this Trojan only once. So I use it for different campaigns, for UBS Switzerland, for Bank of America, for Nordea, whatever. So you can assign, when they report back, you know, this Trojan belongs to which campaign. Very important, we have a strong authentication. Excuse me, I still suffer from a cold. We have strong authentication, so we want to assure that I, as the bot master, I stay in control of my botnet. I don't want law enforcement or my competitors to take over all the infected hosts. This seems trivial, but if you read the stories last year about this federal Trojan in Germany, it's not that trivial. So we have some options how we want and where we want this Trojan to be installed. We have some options like how we want to make sure it is restarted, and here we come to the Trojan phase. Basically, I select a binary that I want to infect. So in this case, I take a Minesweeper. In a true campaign, you take whatever program you want that has the highest success rate through social engineering to trick somebody. Perhaps, hey, Stefan, you're a pilot. This is the new logbook calculator. Try it out. Or, hey, this is Space Invaders. I got a new high score. Can you beat me? Whatever. So I choose this program. I put it in the root directory. I could put it wherever I want. And when it is started, I can start it normally. I can start it hidden, or just run it in memory, or extract only. So I could also use this mechanism just to deposit perhaps compromising material on the target. So I add it, activate it, piece of cake. Now, how do we bypass or how do we prevent detection? Basically, there are two domains how antivirus and anti-malware products function. One is signature-based. If they have seen a malware before, they create a signature. If they see this signature on your endpoint, on your perimeter, they know for sure it's malware. On the other hand, you have dynamic detection. So you have some suspicious files. You run them in a virtual environment and you look for malicious or suspicious behavior. If it shows this behavior, then you flag it as malware. However, we have an easy option here. I just click those 4 boxes and then this Trojan will not run if it detects it does not run in a genuine environment. So me, as the creator, I don't have to go to the techie stuff and figure out how the heck can I write a program that can determine do I run in a native environment or in a virtualized environment. No, I just click it here and we see try to avoid the following methods. Threat Expert, Anubis, Norman Sandbox, blah, blah, blah. It's just click, drag and drop. Okay. Do we want the keylogger? Yes, please. Log everything into this file. This is a stupid name for a true campaign, but it's good for a demo. I can tell it to be persistent, so it will restart when you reboot, and I inject this Trojan into the Internet Explorer process. So in Task Manager, you won't see anything. It's very well hidden. Then, depending how I infect a target, I have 2 options. I social engineer you, so you click on something that does something, but really does something else, or I exploit the vulnerability in a browser, in Adobe Reader, in Java, whatever. Now, let's say I exploit the vulnerability in the browser, and through the exploitation, the browser needs to be restarted. In order to deceive the victim, I can create here any kind of message, and I have a test message here. Security information, your browser will be restarted to load new security settings. Abort, retry, ignore. They all 3 revert to Boolean true. It's just to deceive the user. Blacklist, here I can list process names or service names that will be killed when the Trojan starts. So typically I would list here all the names of the popular antivirus and anti-malware tools, and here I would list all the services that could interfere with my goal. Don't worry, you don't have to compile this list yourself in the underground. You find up-to-date pre-compiled lists of all the binary names of all major and also less major anti-malware tool. Small overview for bookkeeping. Then I create the server. I call it WinMine Spynet. I can have it as an application, as a batch file, as a screen server, or just as a Windows scripting host, whatever is best suited. I can compact it with UPX. UPX is a compression algorithm for binaries. So cybercriminals very soon found out if they compress their code, infection rate is bigger. It spreads faster, and it's harder for anti-malware tools to recognize what's truly in there. Create the server. I don't want to store the settings, and now this server is created in my output directory. If somebody wants to try it out, if you have a USB key, we can test it. Okay, what's the goal of this demo? You see, it's very easy to use. I didn't need any kind of technical expertise, any kind of coding. But the question is, why do we find tools like this? I have a technical background. If I would write a tool like this, it would be a bunch of scripts, very cryptic. Perhaps only me would be able to use it. Why do we get a nice GUI, language options, tool tips? You don't go at lengths to build that if you sell it only once. You clearly see here, this is targeted at the mass market. And as you see, the evolution of every new technology, first it's just the stuff it has to mechanically or however work somehow, and then it's more ease of use. You have more to look after the customers. This is what we clearly see here. This is an old sample, but it's still very valid. We see we get formidable, very easy to use tools, and this really, really demonstrates this is a big market. Okay, so now when we start the Trojan, I have here a session I once recorded. This is an open session to e-banking from Credit Suisse. We have the main menu of the Trojan now. I intercepted the desktop, so I can read the clipboard, I can write the clipboard, list kill processes, capture and control the desktop, as we see here. I have a remote command console, online, offline keylogger. So even if the Trojan is offline, it will record everything. The next time it's online, connects to the master, and I can download everything you typed. Disable services. Who of you has a notebook? Whose notebook has no camera and no microphone? You can activate live capture of the camera, of the webcam and the microphone. It will create on me, on the controlling host, it will create a directory per bot where I get the AV files and the MP4 files with everything that the camera sees. I can disable the toolbar, but very important is update Trojan. What we created was just the core Trojan. This is very small footprint. When I deploy it, I don't know what you have on. Perhaps you have a VPN from Cisco. Perhaps you do e-banking with this company. Perhaps you have this or SAP or Salesforce or whatever. So I can, after this Trojan is run, I can upload plugins to intercept whatever I want on purpose. So very, very targeted. And I can also upload, if I don't use the Trojan anymore at the end of the utilization phase, upload different attacks. So this is very dynamic. By not including all possible plugins, it is much, much harder to detect it for antivirus products, and you're adaptive, so you can adapt to whatever you want. Okay, having said this, if you want to understand how cybercriminals can successfully bypass antivirus and anti-malware products, so we have to understand the malware development process. First, you create the malware, as I have shown, with a tool, or you let it code. Second, you automatically create thousands or hundreds of thousands of serial variants. So here you have the core malware. You need one signature to detect it. Here you have 10,000 variants. They all look different, but they have the same core functionality. Now you need 10,000 signatures to detect the same breed of malware. Then I like this one, as I'm Swiss, quality assurance. Now cybercriminals test their creations against all major up-to-date antivirus products. If a sample is detected, it's rejected, and then you retweak or recalibrate your permutation engine. They're called cryptos. If the sample is not detected, it's used in deployment. So rest assured, if somebody is serious about attacking you, the malware they will use at the day of attack will not be detected on your perimeter or your antivirus. This is not because I say so or I want so, this is because they tested it. This mass creation of serial variants engages us into an arms race with cybercriminals. In 2010, Symantec counted more than 280 million virus samples. This is more than 700,000 samples a day or more than 30,000 samples an hour. So good luck with updating your perimeter defense. This is also very effective. Independent measurements and research shows that between 10 and 45% is the chance that cybercriminals have to bypass up-to-date anti-malware products. And this also explains why Damballa, a company that specializes in detecting botnets or bot-infected computers within large enterprises, they found up to 9% of the endpoints in enterprises to be bot-infected. These are enterprises that can afford and that deploy the best of breed in IDS, IPS, antivirus, anti-malware. Okay, so now let's look at this from a criminalist perspective. I think we could easily say that opportunity is the number of hosts, number of potential targets, times the number of vulnerabilities, times the number of vulnerabilities to break into those potential targets. It is estimated that more than 2 billion users have now access to the internet. This is an increase of more than 400%, or this represents roughly 1/3 of the Earth's population. So with more than 2 billion endpoints, it is clear that endpoints are very juicy target. Also for some other reasons. One is endpoints is where you find the most valuable data, the least protected. Whatever you do in your business, at the end of the day, all the relevant data is on your endpoint because this is where you work. Nobody works down in the server rack. So, by definition, the endpoint has access to all the relevant data. Second, endpoints are very difficult to secure. If you compare it to a server has a single purpose. It's a mail server, it's a web server, whatever. You can lock it down to this single purpose, and the server doesn't tweet, doesn't read emails, doesn't open AV files, whatever. However, the endpoint is very dynamic, and we have unpredictable usage pattern by the users themselves. Plus, endpoints are very juicy targets because one single vulnerable program is enough to own the endpoint. So now, let's look at how many vulnerabilities we find. First, let's look at the software industry. We found in 2011 that only 20 vendors were responsible for about 63% of all the vulnerabilities disclosed in 2011. Those 20 vendors very well represent the whole software industry. I have the list here. And the number of vulnerabilities in 2011 and the 5-year trend. So when we look just at the names of the vendors, we find here that everything from open source, closed source, web servers, endpoint programs, everything is represented here. Whoever does something with software or connects to the internet, you more likely have software from several of those vendors deployed. Those vendors also represent the best of breed that we have in software development, in security know-how. Some of them invest heavily into the security of their products. So I would say they very well represent the software industry, and still we find that none, not a single one of those 20 vendors, managed to reduce the number of vulnerabilities in 2011 compared to the average number of vulnerabilities of the previous 5 years. So vulnerabilities are still there, and vulnerabilities won't go away very, very soon. So we have to manage information about vulnerabilities, and we have to remediate vulnerabilities. We need those skills if we want to survive. So let's concentrate on the endpoint. In order to find out how many vulnerabilities we have on a typical endpoint, we must know what programs are typically installed on an endpoint. As I said before, I use scan logs from Secunia PSI. It's a lightweight scanner. It enumerates and identifies all programs, correlates this information with our vulnerability intelligence, and then reports which programs are insecure. Insecure means available security patches are not installed, or the program is end of life. It's no more supported by the vendor. So when I look at more than the scans from more than 4 million people, I first found a big diversity. So no endpoint looks alike. We see here the number of programs or the number of the number of vendors or the number of products in the portfolio, in the software portfolio of an endpoint. And we see here the percentage of users that have this number of programs. So basically, it's a big diversity, and we can say that half of the users have more than 66 programs from more than 22 different vendors installed on their endpoint, to break this diversity down into two numbers. So this is quite a lot of programs. In order to security track this, I built what I call the top 50 software portfolio. So I built a portfolio with the 50 most prevalent programs. This portfolio has software from 12 different vendors. This is 28 programs from Microsoft and 22 programs from non-Microsoft third-party programs. Now I take this top 50 portfolio together with the operating system and look at how did the number of vulnerabilities evolve. What we found is an alarming trend. So endpoint vulnerabilities increased from around 200 to more than 800 from 2007 to 2011, or it doubled in the last 2 years. So there are more and more entry doors into your endpoint. And it's not only an alarming trend, it's also a relevant trend. Of those more than 800 vulnerabilities, more than half of them provide system access to the attacker, are considered highly critical, and are exploitable from remote. The question now is, what is the source behind this trend? Is it vulnerabilities in the operating system, or in the Microsoft, or in the third-party programs? When I break it down by origin, this is what we found. Non-Microsoft programs are almost exclusively responsible for this increasing trend. So if you take your typical endpoint, only 12% of the vulnerabilities are in the operating system. Only 10% in the 28 Microsoft programs, and a whopping 78% in the third-party programs, non-Microsoft programs. Now let's look at this from the criminalist perspective. This is what you patch. Because it's easy to do, it's Microsoft Update, this is what you're aware of. However, cybercriminals, they just don't care. They don't need operating system or Microsoft vulnerabilities. They will always find plenty of opportunity in these 80% of non-Microsoft vulnerabilities. This was the top 50 portfolio together with Windows XP. What happens if you change the operating system? Vulnerability-wise, nothing. If you migrate from Windows XP to Windows 7, the total number of vulnerability changes barely. Get me right, Windows 7 is much more secure than Windows XP. It's much harder to exploit. It's better security features. But the big stuff on top, this is the top 50 portfolio, all the third-party software. Now the question is, how can we keep a typical endpoint up to date? If you look at the same picture, we have the top 50 portfolio, we have software from 12 different vendors. This means we have to master 12 different update mechanisms, because each and every vendor has his own update mechanism. Some are better, some are worse. But at the end of the day, you're a user or you have to manage that. So we have one update mechanism, which is Microsoft Update, to patch the operating system and the 28 Microsoft programs to fix 22% of the vulnerabilities. And on top of that, you have to master another 11 update mechanisms to patch 22 programs or remediate 78% of the vulnerabilities. We all know that complexity is the worst enemy of security. And this complexity has a measurable effect. And cybercriminals also know patch available does not imply that the patch is installed. So this complexity to patch everything has a measurable effect. When I look at the patch level of the Microsoft programs or of the third-party programs in this top 50 portfolio, on all the users we have, over a year we find that on average 2.7% of the Microsoft programs are insecure, not patched. compared to 6.5%, more than double of the third-party programs. And this is users of the free Secunia PSI. Joe? Excuse me. This is users of the Secunia PSI, so they are a bit biased because they installed this tool. And this tool helps you to identify insecure programs, and in version 2 that's out for more than a year now, it can also patch many of the third-party programs automatically. Okay, so there are lots of unpatched programs and there are lots of exploits. A fallacy we very often hear is that, yeah, I have some very rare program with a low market share, nobody cares writing an exploit for it. So when I correlate exploit availability versus the market share of programs, we find indeed that the higher the market share, the more likely programs have exploit material available. However, there's no cutoff. Even programs with a very low market share, for many of them, exploits are available. The top 50 portfolio is to the right of this. The least prevalent program in the top 50 portfolio has 35%, I think. And even here, programs with a market share between 10 and 20%, for 1/5 of those programs, exploit material is available. So you can't hide. Are we doomed? Well, I have some good news. This is that 72% of the patches are available at day 0. So when we look at this top 50 portfolio with XP or whatever operating system, 72% of the vulnerabilities had the patch ready when the vulnerability was first disclosed. Usually people are very scared of zero-day exploits. Zero-day exploits are very hard to defend against. They're a very big problem. They're also very sexy. They got lots of press attention. However, there are not so many. Zero-day exploits, it's like a force majeure. Yeah, we can do a lot. However, here, this number clearly indicates in 72% of the cases, it's on our table, we can act, we can do something. The question is, can we afford not to act on 72% of the solution? And we see it arises, I think within 30 days, 80% of the patches are available. Even Microsoft found in their most recent security report, they analyzed more than 600 million pieces where they cleaned infections, how they got infected, and they found that less than 1% of those pieces were infected by zero-day exploit. So, let's talk about job security. If you or your organization gets owned before a patch is released, if you're the CISO, then you have a valid excuse. There isn't so many things that you can do. There's limited feasible protection. However, if you get owned in the time when the patch was available but not yet installed, then you need a very good excuse. After the war, every soldier is a general. If something happens, everybody goes in and scrutinizes it to the very last detail. And then there's some very hard question. Why was it possible to attack you? The patch was available for 3 weeks and Metasploit code was available for 2 weeks. So then you have a very hard time. What happens after the patch is installed? Well, there's no more excuse needed because, this is the most important slide, a patch provides better protection than thousands of signatures because it remediates the root cause. If you patch a vulnerability, no matter how many permutations cybercriminals create, they won't be successful anymore because you remediated the root cause. And with that, you terminate the arms race with cybercriminals. A patch has some other nice behaviors. Everybody knows the first two. If you talk IDS, IPS, antivirus, a patch has no false positives, no false alarms. It has no false negatives. There are no missed attacks. It introduces no latency or other delays into your network or communication infrastructure, and after it's installed, it doesn't consume any more resources. If you have your shiny IPS box and turn off the power, you have two options. Either you're offline or you're fully exposed. So antivirus, anti-malware, IDS, IPS always takes up lots of resources to be active, to provide the protection. However, a patch is, after installation, it's passive. Okay, one last fallacy. What we hear very often is business come and say, yeah, program X is not business critical, so therefore we won't spend any resources in patching it. Say Adobe Reader, Adobe Flash. Our business works fine without this program. Yes. But if you look at it from the criminalist perspective, then program X is just the attack vector to own the whole box. After they use program X to compromise the system, they have access to everything, to all your business critical programs, to all your information and everything. So exploitation of any program can compromise the entire endpoint. This shall demonstrate that how important it is that we cannot just close our eyes with respect to all the third-party programs and vulnerabilities. Okay, to conclude, Microsoft is still perceived as the primary attack vector. If we base our defense on this assumption, then we very likely lock the front door while the back door is wide open. We have seen lots of cyber criminals' opportunity lies in the third-party programs. Knowing all the programs and the risks is critical in this dynamic environment. So if we know where vulnerabilities are, then we can dedicate our resources to remediate them. Get me right, we need antivirus, we need IDS, IPS, but we also need to be aware of the limitations of those technologies. And patching, although it's very boring, patching should also be considered as a primary security measure, given its effectiveness to stop this, the root cause and the availability of patches. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Sorry for my voice, I'm a little bit limited, and I'm open if you have questions. Thank you.